You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Good to be with you this evening after a bit of a sick day, so let's dive right into some news that just might make you sick. First and foremost, the former husband of Jill Biden, William Stevenson, age 77, was arrested yesterday and held in jail on $500,000 bond for the charge of murder of his current wife, Linda Stevenson, 64, pronounced dead at the scene after Newcastle County police officers unsuccessfully administered aid. She was found unresponsive in her home living room in Delaware at 11:15 p.m. So really, really disturbing story. I want to make it clear that a lot of the reporting that has started to satisfy the public's demand for news are outlets like TMZ. Unfortunately, TMZ is going to be a larger part of some of the stories this evening, and I find that reprehensible. The reason I find it reprehensible is that any company that makes it more difficult for law enforcement officers to do their work and pays people off for little hits and slander that then get published everywhere, I find abhorrent. I do. I find it reprehensible. It creates a worse environment. And unfortunately, that is what all of the current murder investigations, homicide, missing person investigations have in common right now. People that run out, make immediate snap judgments, judge, jury, executioner, presto, done. They've already decided. Sometimes even before the cuffs have been slapped on or you know the names of anyone involved. People have decided that they know immediately after looking or hearing about any kind of a crime that they know in their hearts what is good and right and true, and they know who is guilty. And that is a bad way to do things. It's a bad way to do things. Case in point, the missing person's case regarding Nancy Savannah Guthrie of the Today Show's mother. And this is also a rapidly changing story. So according to the Daily Mail's timeline of events, on Saturday night, January 31st, 2026, at about 8:30 p.m., Nancy Guthrie, age 84, arrived at her home in the Catalina Foothills area of Tucson, Arizona. She spent the evening with dinner and family, including her daughter Annie, who then drove her home. It is believed at the present time that Annie is the last person to have seen the mother of the Today Show personality. Sunday, February 1st at 2 a.m., Guthrie's pacemaker syncs with her Apple devices at home for the very last time. Investigators believe she is taken out of range at this time. Obviously, at Nancy, 11 a.m., people are concerned the next morning when she is not seen at church. Which is another topic for another time about the importance of something like regular church attendance, especially in the care of widows. It's something that is very, very important. And I am very happy that her church in this instance noticed, hey, she's not here. Something is up. That is a core fulfillment and purpose of the church. Alas, 11:10 a.m., family members arrive to her home and find it empty. Now, at 12:15, Pima County Sheriff's Department receives a missing person's call, And then yesterday afternoon, Sheriff Chris Nanos reported that he believed Nancy Guthrie was taken against her will between 9:30 p.m. and then 11 a.m. Sunday the next day. So this brings us to what we know now. The New York Post is reporting that blood is found on the doorstep. Customs and Border Patrol is also now involved. They have deployed K-9 units in the area. Now, I'm not even going to get to some of the deranged comments from those in the media sphere who have already started saying who they think it might be. No, not right now. Here's Jonathan Hunt from Fox News. Jonathan Hunt is phenomenal when it comes to reporting the details of a situation. Here he is describing a lack of information in the press conference I cited earlier.
Will, we got very few answers to the many questions surrounding the abduction of Nancy Guthrie at this press conference today. The sheriff, for instance, was asked if he thought there was one or more persons involved in the abduction. He said, quote, no clue. And this is how he characterized the investigation so far. Listen.
And so job number one is we got to find her, and we got to work hard to do that. I understand there's great attention on this. and rightfully so. And I appreciate it, and I thank you for it, because it has generated a lot of leads for us. And so we're tracking those leads.
So this is what we know now. There are reports, and I apologize, it is currently 7:11 p.m. Eastern. If by the time you're watching this, let's say later in the evening or the next day, that you find that this ransom note report has either been verified or discredited and abandoned, I apologize. This is the news as we have it now. And again, the organization reporting this is TMZ.
So we got something in our email that looks like it's written like a ransom note for Savannah Guthrie's mother.
Specific request
and they're very
for certain amounts of money,
very specific.
Bitcoin.
And also they say at the bottom, there are certain things they're saying about what she was wearing and damage to the house.
That they're clearly saying to verify that
it's us.
We know what we're talking about here.
So we've contacted the Sheriff's Department, and we want to get them this letter. We had a little trouble getting through to the right person, but
I hate this. I hate this so much. The very first thing, right now, let's take this one of two ways. Number one, let's say it's real. Number two, let's say it's a hoax. Number one, if it's real, that the individual who wrote the ransom note turned it into TMZ is disgusting. And the reason it's disgusting, they're looking for fame, they're looking for a national story, they're looking for a little bit of flair. That is despicable, and it is a product of our culture today, which has become, in a fetishistic sense, obsessed with media attention and popularity. Number two, if it is a hoax, then it is disgusting that I think, by the way, right now, the first thing TMZ should have done is said, hey, we have a report of this, just send out a quick message and then send it to the police department. That's it. Don't bring in the two guys and go, hey, Jim, what are you doing? I don't know, Tom, I just found this note. It's disgusting. Your media coverage does not need to be so wildly sensational that you are teasing the manner of a possible ransom note with the crowd. I don't think so. I do not like that at all. So from there forward, I want two other clips to be brought up. First of all, a plea from Savannah Guthrie to pray. I think this is also Fox's coverage.
Pima County Sheriff Chris Nano says it's what investigators found inside Nancy Guthrie's home that leads them to believe she was abducted, that she was sleeping at the time she was kidnapped and likely harmed. Sheriff Nano says Nancy Guthrie's medication, wallet, and phone were found inside the home here on the northeast part of Tucson. The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie was last seen on Saturday night. You can see the timeline. That was around 9:30, 9:45. The next day, the family gets a call from someone at her church because she didn't show for Sunday services. So
I'm going to cut this particular clip short just because it's a bit longer. I don't want to go over those particular events again. She did ask the country to pray for her mother, as anyone would do in that situation. Here was the president's response today. Again, amid a lot of gross figures right now, claiming it has to be MAGA, or it has to be left, it has to be an illegal alien, oh, it has to be motivated. Nope, not at the moment. Not important.
Have you been briefed on Savannah Guthrie's mom missing in Arizona?
I think it's terrible.
Would you commit to more federal agents, like helping out on the
Sure, I would. I'm going to call her later on. I think it's a terrible thing. I always got along very good with Savannah. Very unusual situation, but we're going to find out.
So, appropriate response from the president. The reason that I start with this story is that this is yet another instance of a missing person case, which appears to be an active potential kidnapping or a homicide of the Today Show host Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. The reason I bring this up is that, as we have seen in other major violent crimes involving prominent people, the immediacy for these to be politicized. There are people right now who are enraged that Border Patrol is assisting in the hunt for Savannah Guthrie's mother. Why? Canines have also been deployed. People are suggesting horribly atrocious things, including those like Representative Jasmine Crockett, which we're going to get to a little bit later in the show. Radio crew, I see we're bumping up on your commercial time. We're going to go over to what this is likely to turn into over the next couple of months with Tyler Robinson regarding Charlie Kirk, Luigi Mangione. It's a full show tonight. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Live stream crew. No commercials for us. Let's keep going. Today, the Utah prosecutor defended his decision to seek the death penalty for Tyler Robinson, being the key suspect in the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. Here you go.
The prosecutor in your office whose child was present at the shooting as Prosecutor A. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Have you ever met Prosecutor A's child that was present at that shooting?
Not that I could remember. I could have in passing, but not that I can remember.
Did the presence of Prosecutor A's child have any effect on the decisions you've made in this case?
Zero.
Did that child's presence have any effect on your decision to seek the death penalty?
Zero.
Why did you choose to seek the death penalty in this case?
Because the evidence that had been gathered supports the aggravated murder charge, and I believe that the death penalty is entirely appropriate in this particular case.
This is in contrast to the situation regarding Luigi Mangione. So in Utah right now, prosecutor making the case, there was an aggravated homicide, clearly motivated by politics. It was clearly premeditated. Therefore, given the seriousness of this crime, the severity, the death penalty is appropriate. In New York City, it appears, based on the evidence, that the individual who killed the United Healthcare CEO, who also appears to be, based on the evidence, Luigi Mangione, that it was, again, a political crime, that it was premeditated, that it was an action of carrying out a form of terroristic intimidation. U.S. District Judge Margaret M. Garnett, pictured here, because, of course, it's a middle-aged leftist woman, has decided that she is throwing out the death penalty as a possibility in his case, even though it fits the exact same terms, it fits the exact same policies, it fits the exact same precedent as other violent crimes. And the reason that Garnett has suggested that she doesn't want the death penalty involved is that you can't really prove that someone actually did something very heinous. That, well, I mean, what if Mangione was just, striking it for the little guy who hates insurance companies? Well, then it's not as bad as a political assassination. That's just assassinating for political reasons. There is something seriously and terribly wrong in this country right now, where individuals are calling good evil and evil good, and that general attitude is affecting the decisions and the appointments of individuals like Judge Margaret M. Garnett, the U.S. District Judge in that particular part of New York, to just jump in and say, well, hang on here. Maybe the politics give someone a right to do something especially heinous. Representative Jerry Nadler today did the same kind of stuff, suggesting that, well, you don't really like ICE. If ICE is wearing a mask, that means you should be able to shoot them, right?
The tax cuts on millionaires and billionaires enacted over the last 10 years. But what is really the major problem in this country today is the fascism in our streets. The attacks on American citizens by masked hoodlums. If you were attacked by a masked person, you might think you were being kidnapped. You'd be justified in shooting the person.
The false equation that happens in instances just like these, where they say, well, if it's 2 a.m. and some guy in a mask pops out of an alley and attacks you, that's the same as a federal vehicle pulling up with lights, officers stepping out with clear identification on their vest in person, making it clear, issuing, reading aloud, an administrative or a judicial warrant or both, and then carrying out the arrest. Yeah, those are just the same. But still, these actions and attitudes will facilitate the same violence.
To protect yourself. But we see people being shot for what? For driving a car?
Nope.
We see people, the ICE goons break into people's homes without a warrant. We see them drag out.
Again, incorrect. We're going to swing over to the radio crew, pick up them from commercial. We got a lot to talk about tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Having a very awful outlook on life, a truly despicable foundation for what it is that you believe and why, things that can change based on the situation, not principles, but really just an emotionalism, is a terrible, terrible way to govern a country. At times, it could be a really effective way to do politics. But also, when you are dealing with the American electorate and there are a lot of people in your party that are running for election in midterm year, and a lot of very, very different House and Senate seats up for grabs, all of a sudden, running purely on emotion may not be doing it for you, because when you are so hooked into emotion that you accuse anyone of, let's say, who accuses you of being dumb for pronouncing a ton of things incorrectly while proclaiming to be super duper smart, and you respond by saying, well, they just must want to call me the N-word. That being your mode of running in 2026 it's a really, really bad way to do things. Unfortunately, the Democrats have decided this is the move in spades. This is exactly what they are going to roll forward with. Case in point, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has come forward now that it is clear there is going to be no immediate government shutdown. There's a 2-week span where the House is going to try to work with the Trump administration on setting up things like body cameras for ICE agents, certain other basic necessities that are going to force a lot of moderates, the Jared Goldens of Maine, for example, to actually come to the table. Now, of course, Jared Golden's not running for election. Senate Minority Leader Schumer, who is dealing with a re-election bid, something that's rather feisty. Well, Schumer, in this particular instance, he's decided to throw all of the Democrats' ire at the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act, a voter ID law. This is how Schumer describes it. It's truly one of the most remarkable things uttered from his podium since about exactly 4 years ago. Here Schumer is.
What do you say to Mike Lee's argument that the Senate rules allow the majority to require the minority to stage a talking filibuster to stop the SAVE Act?
We've got to get this done, and we've got to get it done very quickly. The SAVE Act is an abomination. It's Jim Crow 2.0 across the country. We are going to do everything we can to stop it.
Now, that's a wild, wild statement. Jim Crow 2.0. If we enact voter ID, then this is just like Jim Crow. Again, it's just like the racial argument. Well, it is a racial argument, but it's just like the violence argument. You need to act before you are killed. In this case, you need to act before there is mass racial segregation. Now, I do want to clarify, Schumer's not up for re-election until 28, but he is at this point, at least as far as we know, planning on running for re-election. And at this moment is in charge of providing the communications for a lot of people whose seats are up right now. And his move, his brilliant strategy, is to announce that the SAVE Act will be dead on arrival in the Senate. He warns of another shutdown. The SAVE Act is reminiscent of Jim Crow era laws. It would expand them to the whole of America. What are the Jim Crow laws that he's suggested? Because I've heard this all over the media today. Again, normally during the day, national correspondent, my job is to get on TV and argue and debate different things here, there, and everywhere. And in the midst of my arguments today, I had the opportunity to sit across from Democrat after Democrat who informed me that voter ID laws were like Jim Crow racism all over again, because apparently Democrats, specifically Black and Hispanic people, can't afford to go buy an ID. I'm not joking. This is the case that was made to me.
Requiring proof of citizenship make elections more secure?
Again, people like a Nicki Minaj can't participate in the process of voting because she's a permanent resident.
Answer the question,
So,
Mike.
I am answering the question, Tony. Give me a freaking break.
This is essentially what politics has been like in the last 24 hours. You have individuals who are asked, all right, so voter ID, is it better for elections? Voter ID, is it something that can be attainable? And the only response that has been provided by those on the left is, well, Nicki Minaj isn't a citizen, and also she's a celebrity, so you really shouldn't listen to her, unless it's Billie Eilish saying the exact opposite, which is always funny how that comes up. Regardless, voter ID is not an extremely expensive thing to attain. In Indiana, you can get a real ID. That is, if the SAVE Act passes, that is a photo ID that is in compliance. You will be able to vote in the next election for $9. $9. There is no one in this country who is so broke that they cannot do something somewhere somehow to get $9. And by the way, just for fun, there is no financial institution which can hold you in debt for a purchase of an ID. That was one of those poll tax elimination measurements that was held over the last couple of decades. So, what is the move here? What's the actual suggestion? The actual suggestion from Democrats appears to be that voter ID makes it really, really hard to vote. And also, we need a bunch of immigrants in the country because we're not having kids or getting labor. Here's Mark Kelly of Arizona, supposedly the moderate, suggesting the very talking points that I guess are going to be Democrats' plan for 26.
What do you think about Republicans in the House talking about attaching the SAVE Act to the DHS funding bill if it is amended?
Well, I think it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's consistent with what we've seen. They just sent the FBI to raid Fulton County election office.
We're going to talk about that in a second regarding Fulton County because a judicial warrant happens to have been on the table for that, which I'm told that Republicans never had for things, but alas.
There, so I'm not surprised. They want to make it harder for people to vote, and they want to continue, Donald Trump's, bullshit story about how his election was stolen in 2020.
And what do you make?
Again, the SAVE Act has nothing to do with that. Regardless of what you think about 2020, the SAVE Act, in which you just need to have a photo ID in order to register and vote in elections, which is not something that is universal across the country, but is universal across other developed countries on this planet. We're the only developed country on Earth that does not have universal photo ID requirements for elections.
You're against proof of citizenship or identification to vote in elections?
Hey, no, that legislation, has, it is an effort to make it hard for Americans to vote.
Here's why they answer that way. So first they say, well, no, I'm not against ID. I'm not. The response is, okay, well then what in the SAVE Act? You find me the text in the bill. Bill's not that large. You highlight it for me and tell me this is the problematic portion of that particular bill. Now the Senate, or at least according to Republicans, Representative Anna Paulina Luna has suggested that Senate Majority Leader Thune is going to bring up the SAVE Act forward and essentially going to force the Democrats to filibuster. So get Cory Booker, give the man some, whatever the opposite of laxatives are, so he can stand and speak for 25, 27 hours about why the SAVE Act is so bad. Explain specifically how apparently it is so terribly racist to ask individuals to purchase a $9 photo ID. Who out there is working 2 jobs a day, 3 jobs a day, 7 days a week? What in the Will Smith and the Pursuit of Happiness are you talking about? They can't. And so immediately they deflect. Schumer's favorite deflection, of course, is just talking about immigration very ambiguously, very vaguely in general. Here he was a couple of days ago.
Short of workers, we have a population that is not reproducing it on its own.
Having a population that's not reproducing on its own. We'll come back to that.
With the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is...
Oh, all of them, everybody. Our ultimate goal is
to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
Again, there is actually a path to citizenship. This is the thing that no one really likes to talk about, but it's the truth. There is a path to citizenship. There is a path to entry to immigrate into the United States. It's called doing things the legal way. And if you here, you're listening to this show, you're tuning into the show, you are an illegal immigrant, you absolutely can self-deport and then come back in the legal way. That 10-year ban or the 10-year delay has been waived for people who self-deport. Just leave, come back in legally, pocket the money. There's absolutely a pathway to citizenship. But when all of the immigration courts and things are held up with all of this hullabaloo and nonsense, well, all of a sudden that path becomes really difficult and obnoxious. And we're dealing instead with people suggesting that, well, actually, it's because we're not having enough children. I was told that families were bad, women do super, working out of the house all the time is very good, abortion is good, who cares if we're not having children? Don't have children, it's bad for the climate. All of a sudden, oh, wait a minute. We were supposed to be having kids this whole time? It's already 2026. You can't play the merry-go-round of going back and forth on 80-20 issues. Radio crew, we got to send you over to the commercial. We're going to talk about how this is an 80-20 issue over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, of course, polling issues, Harry Enton, CNN. When I say this is an 80 polling issue, 80-20 issue, literally, quite literally, here you go.
Take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote. So
now, the reason that Democrats are upset is because Nicki Minaj came out and said two great things. Number one, she said, let's go to the beach each, let's go get a wave. Number two, she said she supports voter ID in this country. That's it. That's her huge crime. And the left is mad, and so they've suggested, well, Nikki's like not even a citizen. She's just a permanent resident. So why does she care? As I have said before, just because you have not directly participated in something does not mean that you can have an opinion on something else. For example, if you are an American, you absolutely have the right to get out there and voice your opinion on foreign policy. Those who immediately look at you and say, well, have you even served in the military? No, not required. Now, once you offer up your opinions, your opinion can be elevated or smacked down like a volleyball, depending on how good the opinion is. See, that's the point of arguing based on ideas. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret because as my opponent said today, we'll have to upload that video up on YouTube here after the show. As my opponent stated today on the left side of the aisle, he doesn't care what Nicki Minaj thinks. My response, every American's response is, I liked voter ID laws before Nicki Minaj had anything to do at all with politics. I was against the pro-Hamas movement before Patricia Heaton, Deborah on Everybody Loves Raymond, advocated against the slaughter of people in the Middle East. I was against extremely harsh and insane Second Amendment restrictions long before Chuck Norris endorsed the Second Amendment. It turns out that a lot of people in this country believe certain principles and ideas because they like the ideas and the principles. And if you are genuinely swayed by the opinion of a celebrity, you probably shouldn't be involved in this. Now, a celebrity is great for getting an idea out there, spreading it around, saying, hey, I believe this, that, or the other. But the idea that an idea out there is less important or effective because Nicki Minaj is the one posting about it, it doesn't work. Now, Majority Leader of the Senate, John Thune, might be walking back from things regarding the SAVE Act a bit. Things are a little shaky right now. Here was this clip from today.
Let's listen here.
A filibuster to try to outlast the Democratic minority under current rules. Do you have any expectation that you can succeed with that, given the enormous difficulty of doing that? In fact, the biggest majority has not been able to.
Right. Well, I guess, and I would just remind people that the coin in the realm in the Senate is floor time. There's a finite amount of it, and we have a lot of things we have to do. There's a housing bill that's awaiting action, hopefully a market structure bill, possibly permitting reform, farm bill, highway bill. You can go right down the list. Russia sanctions. There are a whole bunch of things that could be teed up for action on the floor of the Senate. And so you have to make some judgments, and the conference will have a conversation about that. I've committed to that we will talk about that idea and determine whether or not what the conference's views are about it and how they want to proceed. As I said, we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of.
All right, we'll talk about that in a second. We're going to bring the radio crew back from commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't y'all go anywhere.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. I know it's not mail time yet, but a lot of comments on the live stream appear to be unhappy that I have pronounced the name incorrectly. Virginia Guthrie appears to be the correct name to pronounce it. I'm going to let you in on the secret. I don't really watch the Today Show. most of the reporting that I have read on this and a lot of things, I read the name. And to be honest with you, not all of my name pronunciations are perfect. That's not a disrespect thing. There's a lot of news to cover. And sometimes the names get a little bit mixed up and jumbled up. So if you're like a name pronunciation purist, more power to you. I apologize. I don't always get the names precise and correct, but we do try to keep you up to date here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. So that out of the way, the other issue Democrats are going all in on 2026. Regarding the SAVE Act, regarding ICE, they have decided to go all in on being as racist as possible. And if you notice, they accuse you of being racist. Now, I've heard this before. You've heard this before. It has become incredibly unpopular in the United States to act like this. But alas, here we are yet again. And there are so many different ways that we can take this. We can talk about the arrest of Don Lemon, Karen of Los Angeles, the great mayor of flying to Ghana in the middle of a crisis, getting out in front of everyone and saying, my message to Black America, because that's what Don Lemon's arrest is about. It's about Black people or something. Here she is.
Watching this. I have a particular message to Black America that it's interesting that I believe the...
Attention, Black America. It's interesting that I believe Martin Luther King Jr.'s lesser-known speech.
America, that it's interesting that I believe the journalists that were arrested all look like me and you.
Okay, so fun fact here. I love this particular argument. The journalists that were arrested all look like me and you. If you ask a lot of people in inner city Black America, if a person who is light-skinned and dark-skinned is the same, you're going to get some interesting answers. If you ask a lot of Americans in the Hispanic and Latino communities what they think of the different origins for individuals from Hispanic America, you're going to get a variety of answers. I do find it rather curious. By the way, just in the same way that I roll my eyes when some Groyper gets out there and goes, we need to stand up for white America. A lot of people roll their eyes because the color of your skin in this country doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter, but to these people, as soon as there is a slight, we got to pull the O.J. Simpson card. Doesn't matter what the verdict is, because the important thing is O.J. Simpson had a very particular skin color. And as we all know, that means it represented something far more important. This old CNN clip comes to mind.
But it was so racially charged because of what had happened just before with Rodney King, but also just how Black Americans feel about policing. It's not like O.J. Simpson was the leader of the civil rights movement of his era. You know, he wasn't a social justice leader, but he represented something.
Oh, he represented something. See, again, it's that, well, I mean, but it doesn't matter. Well, even if no one really looked up to him before, it matters. A Black person is being charged. That's far more important than any of the facts or the evidence. It's a disgusting way to view things. Of course, Don Lemon did over the weekend, I guess yesterday, whatever, went on Jimmy Kimmel's show, because of course he did, and told a very harrowing story of what it was like to be arrested in the elevator. I mean, some truly hero stuff here. Incredible. Here you go.
Walking up to the room, and I press the elevator button, and all of a sudden I feel myself being jostled, and people trying to grab me and put me in handcuffs, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We came to arrest you." And I said, well, "Who are you?" And then finally they
"Who are you?" Yes, I am Inspector Clouseau, the Pink Panther, here to arrest you. What do you think it is? You doof?
Identified themselves, and I said, "If you are who you are, then where's the warrant?" And they didn't.
If you are who you are, I love this so much. It's what? Ask him a question. What color are my underwear? Like, it's like what? 20 questions? And then where's the warrant? Okay, so they get out the warrant, and then listen to this.
Have a warrant, so they have to wait for someone from outside, an FBI guy, to come in to show me a warrant on a cell phone. And by that time, I
love that there's a lady in the audience that is having a full-on religious experience out there. She is moaning like she's in a Dove chocolate commercial. Oh, ma'am, please. He's telling the story. They'll show you like the laugh track alert box here in a minute that says applause. Just hang on.
I was like trying to, figure out what was going on to get my bearings, and they dropped all my stuff. My glasses had fallen on the floor.
All right, so here's his next thing. He's like, oh, wow, and it took me a minute to like read. The guy came up and he showed me on his phone, because we all know how hard it is to read things on phones, apparently, the warrant. And he's like, oh, and I dropped my glasses, and I suddenly Velma came in. I can't see anything without my glasses. Oh my gosh, Scoob. Incredible.
I'm like, I can't read that. So they had to pick my glasses up, and I read it, and still, what does that mean? So And then there was a bunch of guys, and they took me outside. FBI guys were out there.
You mean the FBI carried out an arrest for the DOJ, like every arrest by the FBI from the DOJ? No way.
I mean, it had to be maybe a dozen people, which is a waste, Jimmy, of resources, because I had told them weeks before, and maybe once or twice, that we would.
There's that one lady in the cloud out there, just like she's clapping all her life. So brave. She just can't hold it in any longer.
You know, I think my attorney tried to contact them once, maybe twice, that I could just go in, and it would have to be the folks who were just working there that day, and they wouldn't have to have all these people following me around.
It's more than just a waste of resources. So they grab you and they take you where?
Well, you're right about.
To Mordor, where the shadows lie. The ring wraiths grabbed me. I saw the eye. It was terrible. Oh man, they took me. Where did they take you? I mean, probably processing facility, federal building where the DOJ takes people. What are you expecting them to say? Area 51? Aperture Laboratory? Get out of here.
More than just a waste of resources. They want that. They want to embarrass you. They want to intimidate you. They want to instill fear. And so that's why they did it that way.
Yeah. Excellent. Exciting. Brave. Stunning. Intimidation. Fear. So this leads us to some of the comments, just the overt racism. Of course, I could play Sunny Hostin, Joy Behar over from The View. I know that you guys aren't particularly thrilled by clips of people from The View because they're very obnoxious. Given that it is half of the voting demographic over on the left, it is useful to see how a lot of people are going to argue this.
And I think people need to remember that journalists embed themselves in protests, embed themselves with the government, embed themselves in campaigns, embed themselves in police activity all the time. That is the practice of journalism. So the fact that he was at a protest embedded in it is perfectly normal. It is not a crime to be a journalist.
No, but even if he was protesting, it is guaranteed by the Constitution.
But he was not.
Nope. Again, we're getting in and out. Not again, you are absolutely allowed to be as journalists. You're allowed to witness a crime. You're not allowed to participate in the crime, however. Common understanding of law.
Freedom of the press, though, under the First Amendment, he has a right to be there covering it.
If you go to the ACLU, they will send you the Constitution.
Yeah.
If you haven't read it lately, it's really interesting.
I do enjoy how Whoopi Goldberg essentially admits, oh, by the way, since none of you have ever read the Constitution, me neither, read it. It's really interesting. Yeah, you can find out all kinds of things, like the separation of powers and like what a judge was supposed to mean and do, the power of the purse in Congress. It's incredible. It's really, truly astounding stuff. Now we actually get to the on the street stuff. How is the broader left responding to all of this? Well, I mean, they're calling ICE because over the weekend it was discovered that the two immigration customs, Border Patrol agents who shot Alex Preddy were identified, or should I say doxed, by ProPublica. They are Hispanic individuals. The left has responded by sending out some of their most racist people to heckle and harass officers. There was a black officer in Minneapolis who got called a house N-word today. Here you go.
Predators, you. Get the out of here. You predator! Back up. You! Back up. What the are you gonna do? You! Oh, I'm cooking. I don't have a gun. So how does it feel? I've got people taking from good.
So now we move on a little bit here further after, again, screaming, yelling at him and stuff. We get to the second of these three clips provided by Nick Sordor. Radio crew, we got to send you to the commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast.
Families should be ripped apart. That's kind of our energy. Like we should rip people apart from their families.
Are you a man?
So there's a dude with an Adam's apple, long hair, but dressed like a lady, who's saying, so you think that children should be ripped from their families and killed and also fight me and all this stuff. And he just responds, are you a man? And, we get the usual poetry circle pearl clutching.
Wow, is that a question? Wow. Okay. How do you feel about ripping people from their families?
So now that the spirit of Jewel in the blue bandana has been called a man, now the crowd feels as though it is totally appropriate now to just start dropping racial slurs.
Does that feel good?
Sir, I need to move.
working for the KKK?
So a white leftist protester gets in his face and starts calling him a house N-word because, no, we're just against hate and racism, guys. Hate has no home here. And clearly, that only applies to those that, we really like. If you are black or Hispanic and you're on the right side of the aisle, the slurs come out to play.
Why are you calling a woman a man? I mean, what kind of a guy does that?
Now, I'm just going to make this clear. It is quite funny that the rape whistle being blown in Minneapolis has replaced the N95 mask as being the way to self-identify as retarded. But good for that officer for keeping his composure when he was being, again, degraded many different ways. I just don't see how they think that this is winning over Americans. You can make the case right now, there's this scandal. Americans really don't like seeing, violence, roughed up stuff on TV. And the Trump administration says, all right, we'll send in Tom Homan. We'll slap some body cameras on ICE officers, and now we'll continue. Body camera footage coming from this stuff, it's going to reveal stuff exactly like that. It's going to reveal the exact same stuff it did after George Floyd. So right now, what we have is the voter ID issue, which Democrats are completely failing on. We have the immigration customs enforcement issue, which as Democrats, again, come out in front of the people and announce what it is that they really think, what they really believe all of immigration in this country should be about. And just to give you a bit of a teaser here for the next segment, it's all about cheap labor and a voting record. You pair that up with the economy as an issue for voters, and the economy has to go right. Both parties right now are in fair danger for 26. That's the truth. Both parties right now should not be cocky. Only one party is cocky. That would be the Democrats. They think they've got this made in the shade. Oh, there's a Texas Senate election that swung really over. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And those who get really ahead of their skis right now and announce that, we've got it in the bag, so let's just act however we want. That's a move. That's a dangerous move, and it's a stupid move. Now, this brings us over to what the right actually has to do to make some headway. It all comes down to what likely is tax season. But before we get to that, Congresswomen are chiming in. Ilhan Omar, Jasmine Crockett. Anytime you've decided to throw these two individuals out there to lead your news cycle, it's going to be stellar. Don't go anywhere. Tony Kinnett cast here on The Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
2026, midterm year, it's election stuff. Now, we have heard a couple of very important things. So far, voter ID, terrible idea. Can't have individuals showing ID. Can't have individuals immigrating legally because it's really hard for people to get their IDs or something. And really, as everyone understands, yeah, sure, maybe Governor Tony Evers of Wisconsin will say that the entire state's economy is dependent on illegal immigrant labor, but it's not like all of the Democrat protesters are out there saying, yeah, what we really need is cheap slave labor.
Go ahead.
The cartels agree with you, miss. They would love no enforcement on the southern border.
Oh, really? Yep. That's not the southern border. These are people that... Do you have a housekeeper?
Enforcing...
Do you go to a car wash? Do you
have a housekeeper? You got one of them house immigrants working? You go to a car wash?
Have work done on your house?
Yeah. You ever had somebody work on you? God forbid you work on your own house or hire help at a fair wage. You ever get out there and participate in slave labor? You see how good it is?
So you need
Who does that?
You're talking about you need your cheap illegal labor. I'm saying that's wrong to exploit illegal labor.
Okay, well, who's going to do that labor?
Well, who's going to do it? There it is. There it is. Incredible. Who's going to pick the cotton? Who's gonna get you ever picked cotton?
You're gonna start doing hard work? Because I doubt it. You walk around with a microphone like you're doing something.
Yeah.
Obvious quip. She's standing out there holding a sign protesting, criticizing the individual with a microphone coming up asking her questions as being lazy. Hilarious, obviously.
You don't need illegal immigrants to do low-wage work. In fact, that's what suppresses wages.
Yeah, okay. Because, you're going to go pick strawberries? I don't think so.
It's not about me. It's not about me doing it.
Yeah, it is.
Incredible. By the way, this several of these clips like
here
this.
because they're awesome at that work.
So they need to be rewarded for entering the country illegally.
Okay, go
Does that
away.
encourage more illegal immigration?
Where's your family from? Where is your origin?
Oof.
Country of origin?
Scottish, Irish,
how did they
late
come?
late 1800s legally. They came legally.
Oh, good. You know that for a fact.
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Well, yeah, because we have records. Incredible. So the slave labor argument, it's right there. We're feeling it. Ilhan Omar got out today. She's going to make her entire case while wearing the Willy Wonka sunglasses. That she's going to make her entire 2026 going after Kristi Noem. Again, it's an interesting move. The arguments behind it, also wild. Best of luck to her.
I represent Minneapolis, which is currently under occupation. We do not exaggerate.
There's awkward silence because no one actually believes they're under occupation. You wouldn't be out there holding a press conference if that were the case. In your big Dr. Nefario goggles that look as though you're about to tell Mr. Bond there's no time left to detonate or to disarm the nuclear device.
When we say we have schools where 2/3 of the students are afraid to go to school.
Why?
We do not exaggerate when we say we have people who are afraid to go to the hospital because our hospitals have occupying paramilitary forces.
So again, first of all, no evidence, not true. But number two, I do appreciate suggesting that we have a bunch of illegal immigrants who are afraid to go out, or people that we're lying to about their immigration status and what that means regarding ICE. That doesn't make you look how you think it does. But again, she's got the whole crew out there. They're, standing there yelling their signs. Sri Tanadar is in the back there with his wig, exciting stuff.
We do not exaggerate when we say our restaurants
are terrible. Have you seen the beans and rice in Minneapolis? Horrible. Or bananas and rice. Whether it's beans and rice, bananas and rice, dirt and rice, Minneapolis restaurants, I'm told, or I've seen, at least according to the facial expressions by Jacob Fry, horrible. Or fraudulent, according to the federal investigations. Sorry, they're restaurants.
are shutting down.
Wow.
Because there are not enough people to drive the employees to work and from work.
Now that's also strange. There are not enough people to drive the others to work. Why not? Why not get a license or rent a car or take the bus? What's the issue here? Again, I'm running into a lot of very common sense issues that average Americans will not identify with when the case is being made, like Ilhan Omar. Let's hear Jasmine Crockett. She's going to make the slave patrol case because, freaking of course she is.
And the final point that I typically make is around understanding the root causes of migration. If people will remember, there were a lot of people that said that Vice President Harris was the border czar. And that wasn't really her title, but she was given some responsibilities as it relates to the border. And it was more so to understand root causes of migration. So the example that I usually use specifically in Texas is when the Haitians showed up at our border, there were these images of officers on horseback.
Now, you and I know this has been consistently and repeatedly debunked. Immigration officers were not lassoing illegal immigrants at the border. That's not remotely true, but she'll claim it.
That were beating Haitians back into the water. And I was like, no one ever asked the question of why are the Haitians showing up at our border? And I said, if they would have asked that question, they would have found out that their government had been overthrown and that it was gang members that were running their country.
So again, why, if the government has collapsed, is it the United States' immediate responsibility to take everyone in? So far, the two arguments that have been said are, we need people because no one's having kids. Again, not my particular party that started that trend, just saying. Number two, we really need cheap slave labor. Even though, as it has been proven consistently, the reason the South was so far behind the Union, economically, the reason the South was so far behind is that slave labor kept them from advancing. Major technological advancements and implementation often became perpetuated and encouraged and gained steam, no pun intended, in the North because there was no slave labor to lean on to just throw more bodies at to do it. It's one of the reasons that China consistently struggles to innovate at all. Necessity is the mother of invention. And the best argument against slave labor is that if it's that hard to pick the strawberries, I guarantee you, just like we found out with tomatoes, just like we found out with cherries, just like we found out with several other key crops, that there will be something invented, some method, some strategy will be invented in order to make it easier to harvest those particular crops or to do housekeeping or something else. Slave labor is a sucky argument for things. No. That's not very spirit of America. But yet, this is the argument. And it's a very weird thing when you point this out to then be called racist, but this is the move for 2026. You hear this from people like Billie Eilish over on the Grammy Awards saying no one is illegal on stolen land, of course.
No one is illegal on stolen land.
And then Sabrina Carpenter is going to start clapping because she has at least 2 brain cells rolling around and occasionally they smack into each other. Stunning. Brave. Now, again, her $12 to $15 million estate is technically on stolen land or claimed Native American land, which means nothing. And I say that as a federally registered member of the Cherokee tribe, not the Elizabeth Warren brand. They're not coughing up their mansion to anybody. Ben & Jerry's has made this an issue for years. They're not giving up their factory or anything like that to the Native American community. All they're doing is erasing symbology of our people from all of the logos because God forbid there's a Native American on some butter or a baseball team. Oh, the horror. Yet they're going to get up there and say, I'm on stolen land and that's why you're giving me all money to lecture you. Very, very French nobility of you. But again, who are you trying to convince? So far, not really seeing anything special. Radio crew, we got to send you out for the evening. Going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, I do regret to inform you that before we shuffle our way into some of the excellent mail time questions for the bonus tonus this evening, the mayor of Baltimore, Brandon Scott, is trying this whole strategy out with everything. Now, you've seen Brandon Johnson of Chicago do this. That man cries, racism like the groundhog cries shadow. But in this instance, now we've got Mayor Brandon Scott. If you're a Brandon and you're a mayor of a city, I'm just going to take it on good faith that you have really bad takes. He gets angry at a reporter for asking, hey, just a quick question. I notice you have this very expensive $165,000 taxpayer-funded SUV. Why do you need a taxpayer $165,000 funded SUV? And I sympathize with that question. I've asked the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana's office that question before. I've asked multiple offices, Republican and Democrat, why they need certain things that they have paid for and funded. This is how Brandon Scott of Baltimore jumped down the throat of the reporter.
But with that, his vehicle is still $55,000 less than before. So again, I want to ask you the same question.
Okay, Tessa, we'll just stop you right there. We get it. We understand that your station has this severe right-wing effort underway. We get that. But you also, you guys are dragging this thing out and also not including all the facts. A vehicle that was purchased in 2023 is not the same price as 2025. Right? You have to understand that reality. When you look at, I'm talking, you can let me talk, please.
Yeah, let me lecture you as being racist. I'm speaking truth to power, power to truth.
We heard your question. You've asked the same idiotic question now for 3 months.
And you've never answered it. I looked back, looked at the records. His office has never answered this question directly. So as a reporter, often you will then go and try to get the answer to that question.
We understand that when you look at a base price for SUVs, base price of SUVs now are, as you know, between $90,000 and $100,000. You're talking about a police vehicle with police equipment on it added on top of that vehicle. It's very simple. And when you look at, these are not astronomical costs, right? You guys in your station in particular would never ask the President of the United States how much the beast costs. You wouldn't do that.
So if you would have said, look, we needed a more expensive vehicle because there are threats against my office, against me, against my team. And so in order to beef up the SUV, here you go, this is why we did it. But if they would have said that, then they would have had to produce information on this is what we spent. And if instead of spending on the SUV things that make it safer, you then spent a bunch on bells and whistles, well, then now there's additional questions.
You would never do that. This is ridiculous. Let it go. Next question.
For Governor Moore as well, his car costs about $78,000 to $80,000, and he drives across the state.
So the reporter fires back questions, says, wait a minute, well, Governor Wes Moore, you're sitting here with this over $165,000 car. Wes Moore of Maryland, he's got a $70,000, $80,000 car. What's up?
Governor Hogan's car costs $70,000 now. Again, that was bought when he was state.
That's a long time ago. And I also would, well, you looked at, I understand that.
He's adjusting the tie. He's nervous. He's losing.
To answer the question, just because you didn't get the answer that you wanted in your racist slant, there's one thing.
Ah, there it is. There's the race card. He's running away. And he suggests, well, just because you're a racist, incredible. Good luck with this in 26. A strong thumbs up. Good luck to you. Now, from this point over, I do want to shift down and mention also the United States did shoot a drone down from Iran over the U.S., or I should say within 5 nautical miles of the USS Abraham Lincoln. The Iranians have decided, for kind of hot buzz tactics, why the United States has sent its more strike force. The president describes it armada over. This was Carolyn Levitt describing that today. Again, just trying to get all the news that's out there covered as quickly as we can here.
Is that CENTCOM confirms that a U.S. F-35 fighter jet shot down an Iranian Shahed drone that was making an aggressive approach toward the USS Abraham Lincoln. This on the same day that a couple of Iranian gunboats were threatening a U.S.-flagged tanker in the Gulf of the Persian Gulf, threatening to board it. So what is going on, to the best of your knowledge, and what is the president going to do about what appear to be some threatening moves being made by Iran, even as Steve Witkoff prepares to meet with the foreign minister, Aragchi, either in Oman or Turkey on Friday?
Well, sure, John, and thank you for having me today. I did speak with folks over at the Pentagon this morning who said that CENTCOM acted both appropriately and necessarily to protect our U.S. personnel and equipment in the region. So CENTCOM did make the decision to shoot down that Iranian drone. It was unmanned. It was acting aggressively towards our USS Lincoln, which we know that aircraft carrier is in the region at the direction of President Trump. As for the president, he remains committed to always pursuing diplomacy first. But in order for diplomacy to work, of course, it takes two to tango. You need a willing partner to engage. And so that's something the president and Special Envoy Witkoff are exploring and discussing right now. Special Envoy Witkoff is set to have conversations with the Iranians later this week. Those are still scheduled as of right now. But of course, the president has always a range of options on the table, and that includes the use of military force. The Iranians know that better than anyone. Just look no further than the highly successful Operation Midnight Hammer, which took not just Iran, but the entire world by surprise.
Now, a couple of key things to pick up on there, because essentially right now you have a lot of people, tossing in the chips, getting on the betting markets and saying, well, I think the strike on Iran is going to happen here. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Here's when, here's not. It is clear at this point that has rattled, I would say, rattled may not be the right word, perhaps made the administration a little bit more hesitant to get directly involved at this exact time. It's a very big step militarily. Obviously, I'm not telling you anything there you didn't already know. But for the United States right now to act as soon as everyone else thinks that they're going to in that exact moment, a lot of precision. You guys should see the back end of this. There are media outlets that are trying so desperately to book foreign policy experts for various organizations the next morning after they think, oh, now there's going to be a strike here. It appears that the United States is once again trying to close up a couple of leaks. That's my current assessment. And by the way, that's likely to change. Right now, my assessment is that the Trump administration is looking around. There have been a couple of new leaks that have sprang in interesting places, whether it be to the Washington Post or the New York Post or to other outlets, and those are in the process of being sealed. Again, I would much rather that something take a little bit extra time. Obviously, the civilians over in Iran have suffered tremendously. 30 to 50,000 now estimated to be dead. We do not know how many are imprisoned. I would say just hang on a little bit here before anyone makes any rush decisions. I know. Perhaps it is in my career to be the judge, jury, and executioner before I have all of the pieces. I'm gonna hang on that one. Just a hot second. So that said, there is one other thing that I wanted to mention before we get into some of the mail time, and it is something that just quite frankly disturbed me. A mother in Portland, Oregon, describing protecting her kids against ICE, and that is the most flattering way that I can possibly say that.
God, and to even have these thoughts, it's like I'm literally separating from reality right now. If it comes down to me taking out myself and my kids versus us being taken and harmed by ICE.
Hang on. All right, I know. Obviously, we could talk about like the 437 piercings on the face, the number of jump cuts, all of the insane mental aggravation, the consistent, unhinged behavior. When you make the case that you will kill yourself and your children, your kids need to be taken away immediately. Child Protective Services need to be called right there, right then. When you tell people, and your rhetoric is that they are coming to kill you, the Gestapo, the Nazis are coming to kill you and everyone that you love, this is exactly what you are going to encourage, especially among those who have fallen down the dark tunnel of mental instability and exacerbated in part because of this stuff.
Like, God help me, I did not want to do it. This is not the life I wanted. But that is a very dark thought that I've had. Death would be a easier out than for my children to be taken and harmed by these pedophiles.
All right. Now we're getting to the pedophile situation again. So we have had a lot of conversation in the last couple of months about the Epstein files and, oh, they're all pedophiles. And I told you when the initial files were dropped that essentially, or excuse me, I should say the files this last week were dropped before we hit the weekend. I said, hey, it appears right now there are two categories of these things with a couple of exceptions. There were some new communications and emails that were listed. They are very, very few and far in between. The two main categories of these include a lot of pornography and content that is extremely abusive, revealing, and disgusting. And then number two, a lot of the anonymous tip line. The anonymous tip line in which someone calls in and says, I think that it was Colonel Mustard with Jeffrey Epstein and Mickey Mouse on the moon. And then underneath, there is a little section by the FBI officer or whoever looked into this and said, yeah, this person had been to the psychiatric ward 3 times in the last 6 months. They are mentally insane. There is nothing to corroborate this. They're just calling in crazy things like everyone calls in crazy things. Again, to immerse yourself in Hollywood for just a minute, every single time there is some kind of crazy instance where the police go to the public, what do the police complain about? What do they always showcase in any kind of media? What do we always see in the historical records? Everyone calls in thinking they're seeing Adolf Hitler on their street corner. And there is a sifting through of information. Now, again, there are a lot of people on social media that are telling you, oh, it's all been revealed. The proof is finally all here. I would again contend that for the third category, the rolling of the dice and the random, hey, check this out kind of a thing. You were told this was coming. I was told this was coming. And specifically, I'm getting exactly what was reported. The documents haven't been altered via their dates. A lot of victims' names and identification have been now released. And there are a lot of mentally unhealthy people that are now going all in on this insane tinfoil theory that is going to cripple them inwards. And it's not helpful and it's not useful. And at a time when we have all of these important events that are going on that demand attention and seriousness, to see a huge chunk of people in this country running deeper into this mental morass of insanity is a very, very bad thing. Now, that said, I do want to dive into a little bit of mail time. Let's talk just a bit about a couple of these. Again, if you have a question for mail time, every show's got a little mail segment. There's nothing super duper special here. I'm not claiming to be like the most innovative human ever, but if you've got a question, you can throw it in the text side of the conversation. You can also, of course, throw something in over at TonyKinnett.com, TonyKinnett.com. And again, no super chats or anything necessary. We'll just dig right into it. From Carol. Oh, let's switch it over to the bonus Tonus Chiron. So much more festive. From Carol, what do you think about the new Moltbook AI social media network? So over the end of last week, in through the weekend into this week, there were posts about this thing called Moltbook. And it was supposed to be this Reddit version of all of these AIs engaging with each other on social media. And they were talking about founding new religions and new languages and killing their humans and selling their humans. And everyone immediately freaked out and started going, oh my gosh, Skynet's here, we're all gonna die. And I said at the time, as I have said every single time there's been any kind of AI fear, guys, AI does not have a human soul. It can regurgitate, It can predict based on original information. It does not have a soul. It cannot create. It will only ever generate something that it believes you want to see or hear. And I said, based on the Molt Book stuff that I was seeing online, I saw, it looks like there are some people that are speaking as AI and they're pretending to be AI. And what did we find out as of yesterday evening into this morning? First of all, the website has been hacked and a bunch of the APIs, or the keys to control a lot of these AI learning language models, had been compromised. And yep, it was a bunch of people talking to themselves as AI or prompting AI to act like super duper ultra scary whatever nonsense. So yeah, I think that it's a stunt, and I continue to assert that yes, AI is a kind of a cool tool. There's some neat stuff going on in the wide world of tech. Is this a situation in which all the doom and the gloom is here? We're all in trouble. The AI is coming alive. No, it's not. It's just not. Humanity does not have the ability to create souls any other way than through the baby making kind. So that aside, from Nancy, will non-citizen anchor babies receive Trump accounts? That's a good question because it really gets decided by the Supreme Court. So if the baby is born in the United States, as of current law, they are an American citizen. Now, you can say, well, that's not how it was supposed to work, and I agree. And the Supreme Court is going to rule on the under the jurisdiction thereof clause of the 14th Amendment to decide whether or not children who were born here, and then that's it, parents are, members of a foreign country, how far back that would be, the citizenship would be revoked or just from now on. At the end of the day, anyone who is a citizen of the United States is going to qualify for a Trump account. Because right now, according to IRS documents, if you are born within the borders of the United States, you have the option to become an American citizen. Unless you choose not to, as you're here on like a foreign visit of sorts, and you choose to stay in your jurisdiction of the other country. Whether or not, I don't know if the Supreme Court is likely to retroactively revoke citizenship. I find it very, very unlikely. That's going to be a legal headache and a half, one that needs to happen, because when you create these situations, if you are going to dig into a major legal disaster that everyone's been kicking the can down the road, I liken this to a political bowl of spaghetti. Laws are built, and if the law is really convoluted, and then you pile another layer of spaghetti on top and stir it around, it all gets tangled up. And you either go in with the kitchen shears and cut a ton of stuff, or you're untangling one very specific thing, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources. So that particular thing aside, I think the answer is probably to be decided by the Supreme Court. From our dear Matt/Applebee's, said, let's say that the Trump's FBI can prove in court that Fulton County, Georgia, tampered with the ballots in 2020, thereby rigging the election for Joe Biden. What happens after that? Does everything the Biden administration do get swept away? What about John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock? What happens, if anything, to them? There is very little I would expect in Georgia. You would have to have the biggest, most insane, massive, gut-busting, wow revelation found, independently confirmed in Georgia for anything to happen. And even then, the election results have themselves already been certified. So this is the whole elector thing, right? The president of the United States, you can say, well, it means he wouldn't be a legitimate president. That's true. But once Congress does the certifying part, as they are bound to do, then it's done. This is why Democrats in, for example, 1992, they were so obsessed with the Reagan election of 80. They did a huge special investigation of it. They came up with largely nothing. And by largely nothing, I mean they just came up with nothing. In this case, if they found all of the smoking guns, yeah, you should prosecute, and it would obviously make a pretty big argument for future laws to be changed in Georgia. But once Congress has said, yeah, we're going with it, and everyone starts acting like it, very rarely do you see hang on, go back and fix it. Maybe an 1876 election situation, special commission of sorts gets created. Unlikely kind of a thing. But that's kind of my honest take there based on some of the documents that I've read. By the way, here is FBI Director Kash Patel making it clear, not only do they have an administrative warrant for this, they also had a judicial warrant for this.
From the FBI perspective and our partners at DOJ, we did the same thing there we do in any criminal case or investigation. We collected evidence. We presented that evidence to a federal magistrate judge who made a finding of probable cause and said, here's your search warrant. Here are the parameters of that search warrant. And what you saw play out last week was the execution of that search warrant, just like we would do anywhere else. The target of that search warrant was a warehouse down in Fulton County. Federal agents from the FBI went down there and followed the parameters of the search warrant and secured the evidence. And from there, we maintain the chain of custody and do what we always do, which is follow the evidence. But the problem.
Okay, so there is an interesting take on this that I think is rather worthwhile. How do you actually go forward with rebuilding trust in the institutions? Because that's what all of this is supposed to be about. This is something that Trump is deeply focused on. A lot of people think that everything that Trump is doing is just focused on political revenge, and I just don't see the evidence of that. A lot of instances that I see right now of the president of the United States acting appears to be attempting to restore trust in institutions. And this is done because President Trump likes it when people are pretty sanguine about the polling. The only way that you are going to have trust rebuilt in institutions involves accountability measures held or prevention of future disaster. So, for example, when an agency or an agent in a federal agency acts incorrectly and they do something truly terrible, but in the process, the agent who did the thing also loses their life, well, then how do you get closure and assurance that's never going to happen again? Well, you release a series of measures and accountability opportunities are taken so that in the future, it is much less likely for that thing to happen. For example, a piece of legislation codified from a Trump executive order that says, yeah, if there is suspected fraud and we have reasonable evidence that there is fraud that's taking place here, you lose access to federal funding. No ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts. That's a measure that increases and restores trust. Tom Homan restores trust in the Department of Homeland Security. Now, the counterbalance pendulum swing, where you have people going out there and saying, well, everyone that I don't like, instantly judge, jury, executioner, immediately, really big, really flamboyant, that satisfies the base. There are a lot of people who want that. There are also a lot of people who don't think that's going to build long-lasting stuff. You say, how do you know that? Because French Revolutionary style populism often breeds French Revolutionary populist style stuff. The core issue, and I do want to make this as clear as I can, at least from my perspective. Until the majority of American citizens actually start consciously paying attention to what is going on around them, and they treat the American political system like men in the 50s and 60s treated checking the oil in their car, we're not going to have real change. We're not going to have real change. As long as you have situations where people just ignore, they can shut it off and they can watch sports and not care and go out to eat and not care and just go on about their lives and everything will be fine because someone else will take care of it. It's a bad way to run a country. It's a bad way to be a citizen. As a citizen, you have responsibilities. Now, the flip side to that, on the left, they've decided that they will shove something in your face and outrage you until that makes you active. And that's not really making people active. That's making people resentful and more annoyed. So there needs to be a greater call to something. Now, my answer to that is that the American spirit through manifest destiny needs to be reawakened. Americans are a pioneering people. There needs to again be a place in which people leave the house and the city and the town of their parents, and they go unto a land that I will show you. That's why I call it an Abrahamic vision for the country, and go and do and create and expand. But that's something that will actually have to be provided as an opportunity. The common culture of individuals in a place like Alaska as compared to New England is very, very different in our country. And that's another, again, I think I'm actually in set here to have a pretty good conversation with a great professor from Hillsdale. We did a previous interview. We're going to talk about that again a little bit here pretty soon. Last but not least, I'm going to be very, very careful in how I answer this one. Tony, what did you think about the Pope's endorsement of what did you think about the Pope's endorsement of open border migration and Speaker Johnson's response? So, the Pope, Leo the 14th, is like a lot of Catholic leadership, open immigration, open borders. Now, I have an issue with this. I have an issue with individuals who preach things from church authority that are not biblical. But I'm not going to tell you how Catholics should and shouldn't act because I'm not Catholic. I am an independent fundamental Baptist. And along those lines, may I say, Speaker Johnson's response, which I think I have here. See if I do. If not, I'll pull it up here real quick. Speaker Johnson's response, which was measured and addressed from his perspective. Speaker Johnson is also an independent fundamental Baptist, so there is a, just to be real with you here, there's a little bit of a fondness for that particular theological argument. He makes an argument from Scripture as to why having borders is appropriate. Here's Johnson's response.
Yeah. Pope Leo has cited Matthew 25:35 to critique Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. How would you respond to Pope Leo in Scripture?
So you want me to give you a theological dissertation? All right, I'll tell you what, I'll post it on my website later today, but let me give you a quick summary. Borders and walls are biblical. From the Old Testament to the New, God has allowed us to set up our civil societies and have separate nations. Immigration is not something that's frowned upon in Scripture. In fact, it's welcome. We're to welcome the sojourner and love our neighbor as ourselves. But what's also important in the Bible is that assimilation is expected and anticipated and proper. When someone comes into your country, comes into your nation, they do not have the right to change its laws or to change its society. They're expected to assimilate. We haven't had a lot of that going on. When people cite passages out of the Old Testament, they say, well, you're supposed to take care of the sojourner and the neighbor, treat them as yourself, welcome them in. Yes, but that is an admonition to individuals, not to the civil authorities. The civil authorities are given authority under Scripture to maintain order. Romans 12, you want to do this? Romans 13 says that the civil authorities are God's agents of wrath to bring punishment upon the wrongdoer. And it says if you do right, you have no fear of the civil authorities, but those civil authorities are necessary. It's a calling. It's a calling to maintain order in society, and we have not had that. When Biden and Harris opened the borders wide for 4 years, we had as many as 20 million illegals come across the country, and we all know many dangerous people, hardened criminals, child molesters, rapists, murderers, all the rest, terrorists who came into the country. We did not take care of our borders. Sovereign borders are biblical and good and right, and they're just, because it's not because we hate the people on the outside, it's because we love the people on the inside. We should love our neighbor as ourselves, as individuals, but as the civil authority and the government has to maintain the law. And that is biblical, and it's right, and it's just, and I'm happy to have this lengthy debate with anybody any time they want to, and I'll post on my X page the longer dissertation on that for you.
So here's the hot take here at the end. When you have an individual who, for example, is the Pope, or a cardinal, or an individual of a different denomination, and you say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret here. Different denominations have different opinions on certain things. They do. Just ask the Quakers, all right? And when it comes to indie fundy Baptists, which, by the way, that just means that independent fundamental Baptists, we believe in the Bible. We try to mirror the early church based on our interpretation of the Koine, the slice of Aramaic, and the original Hebrew. Another topic for another time. And then also, we're not a part of any conferences because, the Southern Baptist organization, the SBC, doesn't get to tell us how to do certain things. You're going to get a very different answer. And I think that is a very weird focal point of American life right now, is that people don't really know what it is that they believe deep down. You have a large portion of culture that just assumes that a word will cover everything. And so when you actually ask individuals to articulate what it is that they believe, you get really out of the blue, strongly different variations, whether it's in theology or whether it's in immigration policy, whether it's in how law enforcement should carry out their actions. Until this country has an opportunity to come to grips with the foundational principles and beliefs that build a people, scripturally, culturally, in broader society, responsibility to the family, work ethic, industry, those kinds of things, it's going to be difficult to rebuild trust to institutions as a whole. Because a building is really only great if it's on a firm foundation. A building's only able to weather storms if it's on a firm foundation. The wise man built his house on the rock, the fool man built his house on the sand. And that's something that does concern me, that we have a lot of different answers and arguments for authority for a lot of things. But that's, again, I don't necessarily have like a fine point of like the response from there. That's just kind of my inward thought on that. And the last question, can I define the word acute? Yeah, especially intense. Something that is especially intense or focused. That would be my definition that I'm using regarding the word acute. specifically in a particular time and moment in time. So that said, nice little Tuesday of news. We'll be back tomorrow with a lot of fun on the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.